Howdy gamers, let's talk about the runes for Nunu jungle. Not the best jungler, and if you're going to pick him, like, man, there really is better options right now. But for some reason, if you're going to pick him, really your only keystone options are going to be Predator and Aftershock. With Predator, I think it's the better solo queue option, as a lot of what Nunu's benefit is he has creative pathing, and then he also has ganks that just are really hard to play against, especially when you have Predator, because with Predator, you're going to make your snowball come down the lane faster, and then therefore just potentially set up a better gank. With it, I think a lot of people go into like a wrong mindset with how to play Nunu. You don't have to be constantly ganking. You don't have to be ganking every time Predator's up, but it is a very useful tool. You also don't have to build AP in the jungle item with this. With Predator, you're going to be getting damage per level, and you also get damage off the ability power. Yes, you'd be missing out on damage from the snowball whenever you're not building AP, but at that point, with Predator, you're going to be overkilling targets anyways. Especially where solo lanes get so many more levels now, you're really setting up CC more than you are the damage whenever you're providing a gank entering the mid game. So with Predator, I think you would stick to the same build with Cinderhulk, but then if you're trying to build more offensively, then you could get Leandry second. And it would be the exact same with Aftershock. The utility in Aftershock is that you have extra stats for CCing a target. So anytime you would engage with the W, or anytime you root them with the E, then you're going to get bonus stats, and then that's just making you more tanky. And with that tankiness, it will let you charge up your ult, or it will let you survive or stick on to targets to a more successful rate, especially when you're having to tank like 2 or more targets. So whenever you're ganking bot lane or skirmishing in the river, things like that. But starting off with Predator, Predator is going to put you in the domination tree. With Predator, you gain an active for your boots, and once you use the active, it channels for 1.5 seconds out of combat, and then you gain 45% movement speed, which is really, really fast for 15 seconds. And then your damaging attacks or abilities in the effect, but then deal bonus adaptive damage on the first target that you hit, and then Predator's on about a 2-minute cooldown. And the cooldown is also interrupted if it's interrupted by casting an ability or getting hit whenever you're channeling it. So with Predator, in combination with Nunu's W, it's going to make it so that your ganks are really, really potent, especially after your first full clear. If you're resetting back onto the map with boots and blue smite, you just use the Predator active and then use the snowball down the center of a lane, and that's probably a successful gank. You're either getting a flash or you're getting something usually, and then if it's not, then that's completely fine too. And then with it, once every single time it's off cooldown, which is usually about every time you farmed 4 camps or so, then you have another gank opportunity. Even if you're not using the snowball, you could still be using it to enter a lane faster or respond to a fight that's happening or counter gank the enemy jungler whenever they're ganking, because the extra movement speed has utility outside of just using the snowball every single time. And then the extra damage offered is a bit more useful in the early game because it's going to give you lethals that you otherwise wouldn't have. With Predator, it puts you in the domination tree, and then your best option for the second row here is going to be Cheap Shot. With Cheap Shot, damaging or dealing, it deals true damage to champions whenever they have impaired movement or actions and you deal damage to them. The true damage is based off your level and then is only on a 4-second cooldown, so this can be procced like 2 or 3 times throughout the duration of a gank, and the damage builds up pretty quickly, and Nunu just makes really good use out of it, so access to free damage that you otherwise wouldn't have. And the third row, you're really choosing how you build up the bonus ability power offered by these for Nunu. With Zombie Ward, it's through clearing wards. With Ghost Poro, it's through placing wards. And with Eyeball Collection, it's through getting kills or assist. With the way Nunu functions, Zombie Ward's completely fine, as a lot of what you're doing as the jungler is existing in the river or around the map, and then clearing the wards is kind of your main job. Especially like if you gank and then it isn't successful, then you can know that that area is warded and then go back to it, sweep it, and then you've gained something for it. Whenever you sweep the ward that the enemy's placed, it places a ward of your own, so then you provide vision to that lane, and then you also gain ability power for doing so. But if you have very gankable lanes, then maybe consider running Eyeball Collection, as you would build up the bonus ability power offered a lot faster. but it's not that crazy useful. And the fourth row, you have the option of Ingenious Hunter, Relentless Hunter. Since you're running Predator, Ingenious Hunter is basically always going to be giving you more value. Ingenious Hunter gives you more active item cooldown reduction, and then it's based off a Bounty Hunter stack, so each unique takedown is also going to give you active item cooldown reduction. So you kill the top laners one, get a kill or assist on the jungler, mid laner, etc. You're going to be building up more cooldown reduction with that. And that's just going to let you have Predator up more often, and then therefore just be more useful. Even if you're not like having ganks where you kill the enemy champions with Predator, it's really annoying for the enemy to have to deal with. Even if you're just threatening them with the warning that Predator gives, you can gain a lot of lane control from that, and therefore just a lot of advantages. In the secondary runes, you have good options. Well, hold on. Ravenous Hunter isn't bad on Nunu. It's actually pretty good, because with Ravenous Hunter, you heal for a percentage of damage dealt by your abilities. With Nunu, you're initially spending a lot of your HP as you're going in, and then you have your E, your Q, and your ult to heal you from Ravenous Hunter, especially once you get the Bounty Hunter stacks for this, then that can help you a lot. But with Predator, the value of having the Predator up more often is probably going to outweigh Ravenous Hunter, especially if you're snowballing early with Predator. Snowballing the game early with Predator, then you should be looking to, or you wouldn't be getting as much value out of the healing if you're already winning. For the secondary runes, you have good options in Precision with Triumph or Alacrity. You also have good value in Sorcery with Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking. I suppose you could run Inspiration with something like Cosmic Insight, and then either Futures Market or Perfect Timing. But to outweigh something like Nimbus Cloak, you really have to try, as the extra movement speed offer goes a long way. Especially whenever Nunu like snowballs in, the enemy is going to be trying to get them off their carries. And with Nimbus Cloak, after you cast a summoner spell, you gain a movement speed increase that lasts for 2.5 seconds. And then the longer the cooldown summoner spell that you cast, the longer the cooldown of the summoner spell that you cast, the more movement speed that you gain from Nimbus Cloak. And with that, it helps you stick on targets whenever you're initially engaging on them with Blue Smite, and if you're flashing on them, even more so. If you're getting attacked yourself, there's also defensive utility in Nimbus Cloak, as it lets you run away from the enemy if needed. And then with Nimbus Cloak, it puts you in the sorcery tree. You could run Celerity, but like this movement speed really isn't needed. It's kind of a luxury. It is hilarious though. Like the Celerity movement speed with Predator and with Nimbus Cloak, you can run it. Like it's not bad. It's not needed though. With Water Walking, you get 25 movement speed in the river and then extra ability power based off your level. So whenever you're fighting around objectives, especially whenever your Predator's down, you're still going to have that extra utility. And that's a lot of what Nunu's looking to do, is fight around objectives. It helps you get in range to smite, etc. So Water Walking is more generally useful with the way that Nunu plays out, but Celerity is hilarious, so I mean, consider running it. And then for the shards, I think attack speed, adaptive force, and armor is going to be the best way to go. You could also run scaling health depending on the matchups. If you're playing into an AP jungler, I think scaling health is completely fine too. With scaling health, you're going to be getting health per level versus the 6 flat armor, and that's completely fine depending on your jungle matchup and then the lane matchups as well. So with this, it's going to help you with your ganks, and then through getting more successful ganks off, you're probably winning the game a lot harder than having extra stats from Aftershock. But at a higher MMR, those ganks are going to be not so viable, and then the stats offered from Aftershock are going to be more useful, as with Aftershock, after you immobilize an enemy champion, you gain bonus armored magic resist that lasts for 2.5 seconds, and then you deal a little bit of damage in an area around you. Aftershock's only on a 20-second cooldown too, so you could gank top lane proc Aftershock, you could gank mid lane proc Aftershock, and then have a skirmish in the river and proc Aftershock. There's in the jungle role, like 20 seconds is basically nothing, and you effectively always have it up whenever you're fighting. In a team fight, Aftershock gains a lot more utility, as whenever you're rolling your snowball into 5 people, you're just not going to survive if you don't have it comparatively. And then with the bonus stats offered whenever you're on top of 5 champions, it's going to help you channel your ult and then actually survive to just be useful, like as you're on top of the enemy champions. And then when you're on top of the enemy champions and surviving, it gives a lot of utility for your team, who you're inevitably setting up for a better fight, like with all this utility. So with Aftershock, it puts you in the resolve tree, and then your better second options in the runes is going to be Font of Life. You could run Demolish. It gives you more damage to towers, but with Font of Life, impairing the movement of an enemy champion marks them for 4 seconds, and ally champions who attack the marked enemies heal for 5 plus 1% of your max health over 2 seconds. So you just give a little bit of extra healing whenever you're on top of an enemy champion usually. It gives more healing to your allies. So pretty similar to Aftershock, you're giving a lot more to your allies versus yourself with Predator. That's the best way to make Nunu as a champion function, but I think you should subvert that all in solo queue if for some reason you're playing this champion over better junglers, and then go with Predator just to get more ganks off. But yeah, if you're not doing that, then here we are. And then for the third row, you have good options in Conditioning and Bone Plating. Bone Plating giving you more effective HP early, and then Conditioning giving you more stats past 10 minutes, and then past 10 minutes, Conditioning is probably going to be outweighing Bone Plating. With Conditioning, after 10 minutes, you gain +9 armor and magic resist, and then your armor and magic resist is increased by 5. So this goes really well if you're building like Cinder Hulk, Gargoyles, and Locket on Nunu. And then those stats just, even though they're really cheap items, since you're building both types of stats, just makes you generally tanky to everyone. And then in combination with Aftershock, it just works really well, keeps you alive a lot longer. Bone Plating would be in like hard losing matchups in the jungle where they can attack you early and there's just really nothing to be done about it. So against champions like Echo, Olaf, etc., Bone Plating is going to help you out a lot more earlier. And then for the fourth row, it's going to be either Overgrowth or Revitalize. I think there's a pretty big trade-off if you're running Revitalize over Overgrowth. With Revitalize, heals and shields you cast or receive are 5% stronger and increased an additional 10% on targets below 40% health. So it's only going to be increasing your Q heal and then your ult shield versus just having more flat health with Overgrowth. With Overgrowth, you absorb life essence from monsters and enemy minions that die near you, permanently increasing your maximum health by 3 for every 8. When you've absorbed 120 monsters or enemy minions, you gain an additional 3.5% maximum health. And with that, you're going to be getting like a little bit over a Ruby Crystal for free. And that value in a jungle, in the jungle role, is really, really valuable, especially for a low economy jungler like Nunu, versus having the healing from Revitalize and then the extra shielding on your ult. I think it's just harder to get value out of it in most cases. So I would recommend Overgrowth, but Revitalize is useful. To amplify the healing on Font of Life also wouldn't really be that meaningful comparatively. So yeah. For the secondary runes, again, you would have the options of Triumph and Alacrity. The extra attack speed offered isn't really that useful. Kind of the same with Tenacity. With Nunu, like you're either on top of them or you're not. The extra Tenacity isn't going to help you stick onto targets. It's like you're investing your flash or you're not. And if you're really trying to stick on targets, Nimbus Cloak is going to help you do that better with your flash or with your blue smite. So Tenacity becomes really, really misguided for Nunu. And then kind of the same thing. Celerity's really hilarious, but I think Water Walking's probably better in most cases. Well, I don't know. Maybe with Nunu as a tank, you're looking to stay on them. So maybe Celerity does gain its value if you're playing a more supportive build and then style, I suppose. You could run Domination with something like Cheap Shot and then Ravenous Hunter. Cheap Shot giving you the damage, and then Ravenous Hunter giving you more healing on your abilities, which isn't bad for Nunu. And with that, you're really choosing like where you're gaining your utility, either through a little bit of extra damage and healing, or through the extra movement speed to stay onto targets, or to get on them in the first place. So against, really just consider the matchups that you're playing into. I think if you're playing into like primarily melee champions, Cheap Shot and Ravenous is going to be giving you better value, as it's easier to get onto them, and then once you're on them, you're just fighting them in general. But against a lot of ranged champions, I think you should try Nimbus Cloak and Celerity. So, and then the shards wouldn't change. It'd still be attack speed, adaptive force, and then armor. And if you're playing against an AP matchup, you could run magic resist. And then if you're playing into just a farming matchup, you could run scaling health as well. You could also run armor plus scaling health, like if you really wanted to. But the extra adaptive force does help you clear early. So that's it with new runes. A really gimped jungle champion, but I suppose he's easier for newer players or something. Yeah. If this video helped you, leaving a like on the video helps me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I play Nunu. I'm just kidding, man. Of course I don't.